Well, hey, everybody. How are you? What an incredible turnout. Thank you so much for being here today. On behalf of the Board of Directors and staff for Habitat for Humanity, Greater Orlando and Osceola County, I'm so excited to welcome everybody here today for the first of our Cornerstone Housing Forums, aligning vision, measurement, and action, hosted in partnership with Habitat for Humanity International's Home is the Key program. My name is Robert Stewart Jr. In addition to practicing government relations at Gray Robinson, I have the great privilege of serving as the chair for Greater Orlando Osceola Habitat for Humanity, and so excited again that y'all are all here. A quick bit of housekeeping before we start. For everybody's safety, exits are in the back. In the very unlikely event of an emergency, they'll escort you to the stairs and we'll all head the 18 flights down. So if you hopefully brought your walking shoes. Restrooms are located out by the elevators, so just around the corner. And a real special thanks to our friends at Orange TV. We're so excited that this is being live streamed today. So thank you to the team that's here assembled, and we're really privileged and thrilled that this is going to be available both live and going forward for folks to watch as they see fit. There's going to be no intermission today, so if you need to move about, feel free to, but make note of where the cameras are unless you want a really close-up cameo on the live stream. You can exit right through the center and head out to wherever you need to go today. We're going to begin today with an invocation, and I'd like to invite a very special guest of ours, Natasha Reed-Rice, Habitat International's Vice President of Global Housing Opportunities and Mission Engagement, to come up, tell us a little bit about Home is the Key, and then offer our invocation.
Thank you, Robert. Hello, good afternoon. It's great being with you all, and very excited about the conversation that we will all be able to partake in. So, did any of you watch the landing of the Artemis II mission? It was very exciting, especially those in the Gen X crowd, to see a successful mission. We were all waiting with bated breath. But also very exciting to imagine what the astronauts experienced, what they were thinking as they took one of the longest space missions in history in that 10-day journey. On Easter Sunday, they interviewed the crew. And there was a wonderful quote, I thought, that I'd like to share with you all as we think through the significance of today and the work that you all are partnering in with Habitat. The pilot of Artemis II, Victor Glover, said this during the interview. He says, in all of this emptiness, this is a whole bunch of nothing, this thing that we call the universe. And yet we have this oasis, this earth, this beautiful place that we get to exist in together. He goes on to say, I think that as we go into Easter Sunday, thinking about all the cultures all around the world, whether you celebrate it or not, whether you believe in God or not, this is an opportunity for us to remember where we are, who we are, and that we are the same thing. And that we got to get through this together, he says. Upon hearing and reflecting on Pilot Glover's words, I couldn't help but think about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s words in his final published book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community? In this moment in particular, I get stuck just on that title, right? King closes the book with a chapter entitled The World House. The metaphor of the world house came to King when he read a newspaper article about a famous novelist who had died. Among his papers was found a list of suggested plots for future stories, and the most prominently underscored being was this one. A widely separated family inherits a house in which they have to live together. This house in which we have to live together, King says, this is the great new problem of mankind today. And it's written in King's English when he says mankind, but I would insert humankind. He says, we have inherited a large house, a great world house in which we have to live together. Black and white, Easterner and Westerner, Gentile and Jew, Catholic and Protestant, Muslim and Hindu. a family unduly separated in ideas, in culture, and interests, who, because we can never again live apart, must learn how to live together with each other in peace. This is why I'm so drawn to the Habitat mission, a mission where we seek to put God's love into action by bringing people together to build homes, communities, and hope. And in many ways, we are doing the work of building the world house, one community, one family at a time. This call to build the world house, to build community in moments where we seem very divided in many ways in this country, in this world, is what I like to call the work of the prophetic. I believe we are called to do the work of the prophetic, to create something we have yet to see, and not the work of the partisan. When we think about housing and community building, it elevates us above all of the little corners we may want to hover in and pulls us into a collective story. And the beauty of the Habitat story is just that. Habitat began as a vision on a farm in South Georgia called Koinonia. It was an experiment. Can we actually create a community that looks like what it looks like to put God's love into action? And so that experiment brought people together, different races, different folks from all over, to try to create a space where they ate together, where they were paid the same, where they farmed together, where they created community. And that launched the movement of Habitat, a movement of people in local areas all over this country, all over this world, working together to build more prosperous and vibrant communities by making sure everyone has a safe, decent place to call home. That's a pretty cool mission. And it's a pretty awesome opportunity for all of us to be a part of. So since our founding in 1976 as a Christian organization, we've now helped more than 65,000 people globally build their futures on their terms through access to decent housing. And we've done that by working alongside people from all walks of life, from all different races, coming together to finance their homes, innovating new ways of building and financing, and advocating for policies that make constructing and accessing housing easier for everyone. So, Home is the Key is one of the activations that allows and enables us to do this great world house work. Home is the Key is Habitat's annual national awareness and fundraising initiative that calls attention to the need for affordable housing and helps to open the door to equitable homeownership across the U.S. This is the 10th annual initiative of Home is the Key, and since launching it in 2017, Home is the Key has raised more than $16 million. This is one of 5 activations. The other activations will be in New York City, Washington, D.C., Indianapolis, and Seattle. And through those activations, we are celebrating April as a Housing Affordability Month. The month of April is the month where we really hone in with partners like you all on creating the ecosystem that allows us to build more homes affordably for people all over the country. So we thank you all for being a part of this initiative, a part of this activation, more importantly, partners of Habitat in the work that we do. With that, would you please join me in an opening invoking prayer? So God, in this moment where all around us, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of negative things happening that are trying to divide community, violence, conflict, great human need. There's a lot of good things happening, like this gathering, like those of us who are determined to do the good work in the land of the living. So we pray today as we listen in conversation and join in dialogue that you prick our hearts to see those who've been rendered invisible, to hear those who've been rendered voiceless, to go after the one sheep who got away, to be mindful of those who may not have what we have, to be mindful of the need in our communities, ignite our minds to lean into the hard problems so that we might together seek solutions that are people-centered, that are community-oriented, Help us to be prophetic, to put into practice and into concrete and into reality values of love, of faith, and to imbue hope. May we be inspired and ignited to be builders of homes, communities, and hope. And as we do so, we give you great thanks for the opportunity to participate in your great work on earth as it is in heaven. So to you, O God, the one who unifies through love, who brings hope into hopeless situations, who equips and insists on justice, and who can bring such great light even into the darkest corners. We give you great thanks, and today we together all say, Amen.
Reverend, thank you so much for that. I'm not sure how I'd successfully follow it, but we're going to try. Again, on behalf of the board and our entire staff at Habitat, we're particularly grateful today for Habitat for Humanity International's sponsorship and funding of today's event with support of sponsors Lowe's, iHeartRadio, Blizzard Entertainment, and Colgate-Palmolive. So a thank you to all of them for sponsoring today. Natasha's joined today in representing Habitat International by Tim Phillips, their Chief Legal Officer. In addition, we have the pleasure of hosting John Beecher and Art Lucas from Lowe's. And so with all of them, thank you for joining us. We have some special guests in the audience as well that I want to recognize. Of course, United States Senator Mel Martinez is here. His wife, Kitty, will be joining along with their daughter, Lauren, their son, John, and daughter-in-law, Helen. They'll all be joining us as the day progresses. State Representative Rita Harris is here. Rita, thank you for joining us. From the Orlando City Council, we have Commissioner from District 1, Tom Keene, is here. District 5, Commissioner Shan Rose is here. Chris Durant, on behalf of District 3, Roger Chapin's office is here. We also have Commissioner Emeritus, Robert Stewart, is here. I used to think emeritus meant you were no longer with us, but it apparently doesn't mean that. The older, wiser, but not quite as good-looking Robert Stewart is here with us today. Dad, thanks for coming. From Orange County, we have County Administrator Byron Brooks is here with us. Also, Carol Burkett, on behalf of the Mayor, Deputy Chief of Staff, is here with us. County Commissioner, District 1, Nicole Wilson, I think, is here. So thanks for joining us. And then Roxy Santiago from Congressman Soto's office is also here with us. Thank you. I don't think I missed anybody, but if I did, thank you for being here. We're so excited to have you. On behalf of the board and on behalf of the organization, I want to say thank you again. What's happening at Habitat Orlando Osceola is just unmatched in terms of what's driving housing policy, driving solutions in our community, and really leading the nation in some of the things you're going to hear about today. Over the last couple of years, our board has taken on major initiatives like Face the Housing Crisis, which you probably saw in our community, an award-winning public awareness campaign put on by our friends at ANBAR that really, we hoped, started and changed a conversation around what this housing crisis really is and what we as a community have to do to come together to solve it. That work doesn't happen without our absolutely phenomenal board. Many of you are in the room today, and if you're on our board of directors, I'd ask you just to please stand and let us say a quick thank you. Thank you. And you're also going to hear today from Dr. Dale Brill, who's going to walk you through some of that groundbreaking research that we're doing called the Florida Community Progress Index. And you're going to learn more about that today. But suffice to say, this is one of a kind. There is nobody that we can find in America that is thinking about housing, thinking about community solutions the way that Dale and his team are, and we're so proud to be a part of it and proud to have you here to listen to a little bit about it. And next, I get to introduce Catherine McManus, our CEO. Catherine has now started her 11th year of leadership in the organization and is an absolute dynamo in this community, a visionary, a passionate leader that brings our organization, our board together in a way that I simply can't describe to you without you being in the room, but you're going to hear a little bit about it today. And Catherine, it's an honor to work with you, to call you a friend, and to welcome you to the stage. Come on up.
Love it when people talk sweet about me. So thank you for all of you. Wow. Today, before I start, if my team could please stand and be recognized for the amazing work. It took a lot to make today happen. So thank you to the Habitat team. So as you've heard from Robert, and you're going to be hearing from Dr. Brill in just a few moments, we really have decided to not just move the needle through new construction, through sticks and bricks, but to work upstream through research, because we know together, all of us, we can make a difference and we can make a change. And research and experience demonstrates that housing is truly the cornerstone of community progress. And at Habitat Greater Orlando and Osceola County, we believe that affordable and stable housing is not just about shelter. It's the foundation for a thriving community, for families, for individuals. Housing is where health is nurtured, where education is strengthened, and opportunities unlocked. It's the key to a vibrant economy and a strong regional workforce. Yet today, the housing system is indeed broken. It is a crisis that threatens the health of our families, the strength of our economy, and our collective future. But we are proud to be leading the charge to address it. Our initiative, Cornerstone Housing, frames the solution sets needed to address the housing crisis. It also introduces a systems thinking approach to policy development. Through research and community engagement, it seeks to create a more sustainable and accessible housing system by fostering collective action among all stakeholders. Now, to share more about our work is Habitat's Chief Policy Officer, Dr. Dale Brill. Dale.
Where do we go from here? Until 10 minutes ago, I had no idea how I was going to open up our presentation. That's really the fundamental question. We have some suggestions we'd like you to consider. And that's grounded, as Catherine said, in research. But the good news is this will not be a data fest. The screens are too small. Time is too short. Whoop. There we go. First time with the clicker. Time is too short because when you're 61 years old and you're looking at your children who happen to be 11 and 9, I'll let you do that math. The legacy that my family, my dad and my parents always wanted to leave was just better for our kids. And I think that still permeates the American dream, right? And so when we look at that, I'm reminded that we were here, most of us, or many of us were together 2.5 years ago when we called attention to this issue with you. And it sometimes might feel like being Captain Obvious that we have a housing problem. But it's who it's impacting is the biggest surprise to many. And so we created a campaign with Ann Barr and put that forward to say that it's the faces of the housing crisis that are now broader and deeper than you might have ever imagined. And to take you back there, let's look at a 30-second clip to give you a sense of how we brought that to market. Now, at the conclusion of this campaign, we did some research, surveyed the community, and found that over 50% of the folks in our community agreed that housing is either strongly agree with it as a crisis, or agreed that it is a crisis. And that seemed about as far as we needed to go to feel the agenda to do something more about it. And so we started asking some very fundamental questions over the last 2.5 years. The questions were, why is it so persistent? Which led us to, what are the root causes of the housing system? Because as Catherine mentioned, we went from the crisis work, which is downstream. And that's the legacy of Habitat. That's going nowhere. It's kind of like trying to be a dentist, put yourself out of work. We want desperately to not have to be functioning in a crisis mode because people can't find affordable housing. But to do that, we started looking upstream to ask those key questions. And we ran right into a fundamental question of measurement. We're measuring the wrong things. So let's take a look. In addition to measuring the wrong things, we found out that we've got a distorted lens as a result of that mixed measurement. When you have a distorted lens, that means that, well, you're not measuring the right things. And if you're not measuring the right things, you don't see the problem clearly. Then we looked at the second, boy, this is not going the way Mom planned. Tell you what we're going to do. We're going to go off the clicker, if we could. And can you build by hand? All right, let's do that. All right, so we don't see the problem clearly. And if you don't see the problem clearly, that cascades into other issues. That means that also that you don't aim the resources precisely. This community doesn't lack for intent and even effort. But if you have a distorted lens and you don't see the problem clearly, if you are in a situation where you're not able to aim as precisely as you need to solve the problem, that then creates distortions in the coordination and collaboration. So we're really not acting together to the efficient and to the impact that we can. And then finally, I would argue we don't know what works. And if we don't know what works, we can't share it amongst each other and build on that. Now, there are exceptions to that. One of them's in the room, and you'll hear from him momentarily. In fact, Central Florida end of the year. Where we have best practices in this community that we want to hold up. But we want to learn and share fast because time is short. Next slide. So let's deal with, or let's address, again, I'm calling these strong suggestions with a prescription for each of what the root causes might be. The first one, as I mentioned, is a distorted lens. And behind that distorted lens, what's creating the cloud, is fundamentally the benchmark of 30% as a cost burden measure for affordable housing. Please raise your hand if you've heard just remotely of cost burden as a measure of affordable housing. Okay, and if you're not, it's been around, it's ubiquitous, it's everywhere. HUD uses it, everybody uses it. And it's a good signal of, do we have a problem or not? And I could give you the data points. There are far too many as a percentage of our population that are cost burden. If you spend more than 30% of your income on housing, you are cost burden. If you spend 50% more or more of your income, you are severely cost burden. That's about as far as it takes us. It is a misleading indicator in many cases, and it ignores the underlying dynamics of what's happening in the housing system. And when you can't see that, you are looking indeed through a distorted lens and you can't address it. So there's no insight really for the interventions. Now, we're not entirely guessing, but it's the fundamental problem. We're measuring the wrong thing. So what's the prescription? This is really easy. Next slide, please. Oh, there you go. No, back. Is change this formula. And here's the formula. This one is the formula. Put it there, please. If you can. Okay, you can't. All right. Here's the formula. You don't need to know the math, ladies and gentlemen. I'll just walk you through it. You take your housing cost, divide it by your income. If it's more than 30%, what are you? Right. If you are 49% cost burdened, and that's the household on the left, a family of two with a child, 49% cost burden, spending a little over $3,000 a month on housing, and that includes things like utilities, homeowners insurance, those types of things. And you're making 79% of the area median income. And the area median income for a family of three is $83,400. I know you knew that. So you're spending $3,000 you're making about 75, you're cost burden. Now, the family on the right-hand side of my diagram is a family of two adults. They are 35% cost burden. They're spending a little more than $3,700 a month. But the family in that household makes combined a little more than $126,000. But what policy is left to do with this measure is treat the family on the left, a family of two with a child, and the family on the right, two adults, as both cost burdened, because that's what we know about them. Now, I don't think you need a doctorate to understand that the needs and the budget of a family with two and a little one, however old, is different than a family of two adults. Fair enough? All right. But we treat them the same. What's the prescription look like? We suggest that we are going to a residual income model. Now, this isn't original to us. The research ended tragically around 2010 when Michael Stone was killed in a boating accident. But two of his remaining colleagues went on to publish a little bit down in Australia, and we stumbled on it, chased it as far as we could, and said, this makes too much sense. What it says fundamentally is, let's take the housing expense and subtract that from income, and let's also subtract the other essential budget expenses that have to be made. Now, Eric Gray's saying, well, okay, wait a minute, what's essential? Because my essential may be different than your essential. Well, we use a third party, which is the University of Washington's self-sufficiency budget, which standardizes expenses down to the county level. And they're fundamental. They're not my MLB.com subscription, although everybody should indeed be interested how the Cubs are blowing it up this year. But we look at these expenses, and they're standardized, and they're localized, and we can see what's left. And that's what the residual model is called. Residual is what's left. And what we can see here is that in these two families, same situation. What's left over for the family of two with the little one, they're in a negative $2,500 position. In comparison, on the right-hand side, they're on the plus side. But with cost burden, we treat them from a policy perspective as if their situation is the same. That's a distorted lens, would you agree? Amen. Next slide. And Reverend Rice, I always wanted to be able to say amen. Let's apply this to our favorite teacher, or one of them anyway, Kenneth, who is a Habitat owner. On the left, if we apply the cost burden rule, we see that what policy would prescribe is that he ought to be able to afford $1,560 on his housing. And what we assumed is that he makes in the top 10% of his profession. We looked at his expenses and see that in reality he can afford a little over $1,000. Now, if you haven't looked for an apartment lately, or if you haven't purchased a house lately, you might imagine that's kind of out of the question. So the residual model calls that and says you have to change your view. Next slide, please. Now, I don't expect you to see this, but we can heat map this. This is where the data geeks in the room are going, oh my gosh, they're heat mapping. We can heat map, and we can even plot where stable housing opportunities are located in our community. And a stable housing opportunity is defined as a residual income that's not below zero. Because we'd like people to be able to save, splurge every once in a while, plan for the future, take part in that American dream, build wealth. But if you're in a negative position, if you're sinking, it's hard to imagine yourself on shore sunbathing. So we can look at this. Now, if you're an employer in the room, and you have a particular interest, in Kenneth's example, the public school system might want their teachers to live closer to where they work. Hospitals might want their employees to live closer to where they work. Why? Because we know that productivity and economic efficiency drops. And those of you that aren't employers, when you're stuck on 408 or somewhere on a road, and you look to the left and you look to the right, chances are somebody else in that car is cost burden and commuting from Lake County, Putnam County, Sumter County, Osceola County, and then Osceola County is also now in an influx situation. Their employers are pulling people. It impacts all of us. Next slide. Now, the last three are very fast. We also have an allocation failure. Because if we're distorted and we are making policy decisions and budgetary and allocation decisions based on a measurement that distorts our view, we can't possibly be making allocations that are efficient and the most effective. just defies logic. It's very difficult. We might get lucky. And in fact, there's some progress in our counties. And I can tell you where they are by neighborhood, by census tract. But broad-based prosperity is about everybody being lifted as the boat rises with the tide. So an allocation issue says that even when we are trying to act, if we're not pinpointing and we are layering our expenditures, then what we have is fragmentation. One funder is doing this, another funder is doing this, funding is going all over the place. Great intentions, the heart is there. But imagine if it were focused. So we have an allocation issue. The dollars are spread but not effectively applied. Let's look for the prescription. Real simple. If we can tell you where stable housing opportunities exist, if we can tell you where stable housing opportunities are needed, if we can tell you the dynamics underneath the relationship of the struggles that lead to being cost burden, it seems like then we can focus where we need to be. It's a unifying framework simply through getting measurement right. Next slide. Third failure. It's a coordination issue because 1 + 2 = 3. Failure 3 is a result of not layering and not focusing, and then not having feedback mechanisms of what's happening that allow us to adapt and to shift and to move. Because there's no policy in the world. One of the things when I worked in the political system in Tallahassee was, well, there's no such thing as a perfect bill. Truer words have never been spoken. Okay? What there ought to be are ways to address the unintended consequences and the flaws in that well-intentioned legislation or local ordinance that then help us evolve as a community and respond. And we've got some very responsive, the housing folks that I've come to meet. When I came here from Tallahassee, and I say it this way, I came here to stand on the shoulders of giants. Many of them are in this room. The community you built, it is an absolute pleasure to be here by choice to say, I want to be part of this. We've got a lot going on that's right. How do we leverage that community of partnerships and create mechanisms that are based on feedback loops that say, this is working, this isn't, this is working, do more of this, but if you do more of this, this might happen. We have to fundamentally, with our prescription, next slide, there it is to redefine collaboration, redefine coordination. And what we mean by doing that, we've offered at least one thing. We have created a systems thinking scenario planning process called the Gordian knot experience. You see it being played right here. Looks a lot like a board game, doesn't it? But what it does is it allows us to set up scenarios of change. If interest rates were moved like this for this particular family, if we change the AMI tiers to do this, let's all talk about it because it puts at least 8 stakeholders, each with their own opinion and their own view of what's happening inside the housing system to talk about it and to work that out. Because if we can work it out on the front end, then we're not surprised on the back end. And I'm naive enough to think that we could even put a damper on NIMBYism because everybody will see the stake in the game because they've been heard and they've been challenged with the same challenge. They've been challenged with the same questions that we have to find a community answer to. So the Gordian knot experience, we welcome that to be displayed, played, utilized in your organizations. We'll do it for you. We'll do it with you. Next slide. The final failure is 1 + 2 + 3. Well, I went to the University of Tennessee. That can only equal 4. Failure number 4 is that we can't possibly learn. I've already alluded to this, but those feedback loops are required to allow us to understand what's going great at Lyft. And I don't know if anybody's been any better about sharing the great things that they're doing. How do we listen intently, and then how do we adapt it to other situations? How do we support that work? How do we do it on our own? What does it look like? But we're in a failure situation on the learning side. We're not learning fast enough. It's hard to imagine doing that. With our final prescription, we offer the Florida Community Progress Index. Our chair, Robert Stewart Jr., gave you a sense of what that looks like. There's copies, there are 3 or 4 of them in the middle of your table. They're available online. You can download them, and you can flip through them. Each of those then reviews down to the census tract level and down to the neighborhood 54 different indicators that all roll up to one number. So you can ask a question, how are we doing? If you're old enough to remember Ronald Reagan debate question where he said, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? We can tell you because we have a baseline from last year, we have year 2 complete, and we are tracking how neighborhoods are doing as those 54 indicators roll up into one. And if you have particular interest in a subsystem, we can give you a sense of how that's working as well. Now, what do we have? We have a learning system. Funders crave some sense of impact. Because from my view, what we're left counting is activities. What we're left counting is outputs. How many people sat in your classes? How many people got certificates from your programs? Those are all absolute necessary operational things to do. What we can't answer, with, at least from my perspective, with any sufficient sense of certainty, is are we making a difference? And where? We can answer that question now by census tract and across multiple dimensions. 4 failures, not to be daunted. We're suggesting 4 potential initial prescriptions for what that might look like. All right, next and last slide. Oh, that's the next to the last slide. There we go, 2 more. There you go. So that's the situation, folks. So we walked into the room. I wanted to give you some sense of the fact that setting up the rest of our conference together is that we've been doing some things that have created limitations for us that create what I'm calling the missing capability. And if we can address those, then something magical happens. And here we stayed up, at least I did, for weeks coming up with this visual. I think you're going to be impressed. Next. Yeah, there it is. That's the current space. We feel contracted. We feel handcuffed. There's not enough room to breathe. There's not enough room to think. There's not enough room to collaborate. Because we're limited in that activity. But with 4 prescriptions, if we can fix the measurement issue, clear up those lenses, allocate with some precision, redefine what coordination and collaboration looks like. This is the community that has done that. Artemis, we own innovation. It's in our DNA. Let's innovate in social and public policy. And then finally, we can learn. Will we get it right every time? No. Do people have an appetite for failure? They really don't. But that's where the courage has to come in. Measure it, pilot, adapt. That's the Cornerstone Housing Framework. Nobody fell asleep? I know it may be a little cool in here for you, but if you have any questions, I think we've got time for 1 or 2. If you've got them. None from Jacob Stewart Jr., though. Do you buy this? What's got you going, maybe not? What's got you enthusiastic about the potential? Oh, we got one. Liz, what you got? Anybody? Okay. Eric Gray has no questions, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Oh, Chev, yes, please.
So, what makes you hopeful? What makes you hopeful that change about the changes in the housing system that are possible?
Hopeful. Yeah, I'm a perennial cynic. I'm the old guy on the staff, and I'm always the cynic. What's hopeful? When I look at Eddie Moreton, and when he's so willing to talk to me, when I see that we can reach out to a United States Senator, former HUD secretary, and he comes in and counsels us and shares what he's thinking about. Nobody has ever said no when we've asked them to weigh in. That gives me hope, because we are done when we all sit on our hands and say, I can't do anything about this. That cynicism will kill us. It will end the quality of life we have. So hope is all we have, and we have tools to give it life. Thank you, Catherine.
Or here. Sorry, excuse us, technical issues. Dale Brill, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much. It's almost like we've just birthed a baby. We have been working on the Cornerstone Housing Initiative for 3 years because we knew we needed to move the needle And we were only going to be able to move the needle towards success by policy and research and by measuring what matters. So thank you for coming today. I'm not saying goodbye. I'm just so excited about the work we're doing, and I hope that you are too. Habitat Greater Orlando and Osceola County is celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. We are very excited that we have been part of that, and our faith is really a key indicator of our DNA, of who we are. And so today I am honored to welcome Dr. David Swanson, Senior Pastor and Head of Staff, and most importantly to me, Board Member of Habitat Greater Orlando and Osceola, to take us through a conversation of faith and housing. Thank you.
So good afternoon to everybody. I'm delighted to be with you, and even more pleased and delighted because when I got here, I had no idea what I was going to preach on Sunday. But thanks to Reverend Rice, I now have 2 awesome quotes and 2 points, and so I'm 2/3 of the way there. I just need to steal the clothes, so I will have to text her later for what that is. So the other thing is I had a wager with someone on how many people would be in the room wearing a tie. And I win because the bet was I would be the only one in a tie. So Nick and Robert Jr. are in a tie, and God bless both of you. I won some money. Let's bring the tie back is what I want to say. So as Catherine said, I've been at First Pres now since 2004, so 22 years this August. And as soon as you arrive at First Pres, you are in the middle of the housing crisis. Because there are homeless people on your porch, sleeping on your benches at night. And so it was an immediate problem before me, and I've been in it ever since. And our church has tried to do creative things along the way. We were part of founding the Christian Service Center. We helped found iDignity. We had a homeless ministry on our campus called the Compassion Corner for many years, which is now actually housed at the Christian Service Center. And so we have spent, literally in my 22 years, hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to meet as many needs as we could. Many of them felt needs, but we started to dig into systemic needs, which led me to be on the Central Florida Commission on Homelessness and a few other things like that. And yet, as many of you in this room know, the vexing problem about the housing crisis is you never cut the ribbon. You're never done. What you did this year, you have to turn around and re-up, and you got to do it again next year and the year after that. And sometimes people get tired of hearing from you, and yet that's what actually attracted me to Habitat and why I wanted to be on the board with Catherine and many other really talented individuals. Was they were doing innovative and creative things, not only building houses, but doing education and other entrepreneurial things to keep people successfully housed. And they had a faith-based mission statement, as Reverend Rice alluded to. They started with this Christian mission in mind. And so at Habitat Orange and Osceola, we really have a desire to see that brought more to the fore so that the faith community becomes yet one more tool in how we bring solutions to the table to solve the housing crisis. Because let me give you a quick little example here. Wall Street Journal article, maybe you saw it 2 weeks ago. Title of the article, How Congress Plans to Solve the Housing Shortage. Are you ready for just 3 amazing answers? We're going to provide easier loan access. That was number 1. We're going to build more modular units. And there was a whole paragraph. I read it 3 times, don't know what it means. And then we're going to put more pressure on cities. And that was their answer. Those are the 3 phenomenal congressional ideas that are before us. But interestingly, there's no mention of the faith community. And so we want to have a conversation now about what role the faith community can play. Because the thing about the faith community is just, if you look at Orlando proper, you've got 400,000 already motivated potential volunteers to connect to what you're doing if you just mobilize them and inspire them in the right way. And so as we in this area think about solutions to the housing crisis, we think the faith community can be one of the tools that we enlist to do that. So let me introduce to you the panel. And this was awesome when Catherine asked me to lead the panel. I got to invite my friends to come be on it. So see people I don't get to see enough. So let me introduce them one at a time. As I introduce you, come on up and have a seat. Shannon Gravitt, Senior Vice President at Advent Health, and she is over public affairs. So that means all government, community advocacy, federal, state, local levels. So she's aware of all the public policy things that are going to impact housing, but even more importantly, in addition to all the boards that she sits on, she is the chair of the Central Florida Commission on Homelessness Board, so has a lot to add to this conversation. Eddie Morton, co-founder and president of Lift Orlando, and yes, ladies and gentlemen, the Central Floridian of the Year, yes. I checked Eddie's head size when he came in the door, and it has remained the same. I am happy to report. But in addition to that, if you don't know, he's the CEO of Lyft, and they have done an incredible job of reforming and literally transforming the neighborhoods in and around the Citrus Bowl. And one of the first things they did was knock down, and I can still see the housing unit in my head, this dilapidated housing project, knocked it down and built some beautiful, affordable housing, and then off they went. So he's super involved in this space. Next is Archbishop Alan Wiggins, the senior pastor of the Hope Church of Orlando, founder of Hope Center West, which is a live, work, learn, play, worship initiative. Incredible things. If you haven't read about Hope Center West, please do so. But one of the things that he has done in the greater Washington Shores community, in and around Hope Church, is he has helped transform that real estate and, in effect, the housing situation for many of the people who are at Hope. So Alan, the Archbishop, has preached at First Pres. I have preached at the Hope Church, and one of the most meaningful moments was when I was perspiring. They brought me, remember I'm Presbyterian, they brought me a towel that was monogrammed with Bishop on it. And it's now my prized possession. So that's my little side story. And then finally, Shelley Lawton, who is the former CEO of the Central Florida Commission on Homelessness. So different than Shannon and I, we were both the chair of the board. Shelley was the CEO, which meant she was more in the dirt and the weeds and the granular things about finding housing, talking to landlords, all those kinds of things. So incredible experience there. But in addition to that, she's been involved with other nonprofits in the community, all of which at some levels have interacted with the faith community. So all of our panelists are faith-based individuals and have, I think, unique insight and perspective to share with us this afternoon. So Shannon, I'm going to start with you, and let's just kind of, as we frame the conversation, let's talk for a second about what is happening in terms of public policy, federal, state, local, that are going to impact housing in this next 6 to 18 months. And then how are those going to impact Central Florida, and how do you see the faith community maybe playing a role in what some of the solutions might be?
Well, that's a big question.
Yeah, how's that for an opener?
So we'll just go right into that in front of our HUD secretary. Let me first say, I see so many friends in the room and so many people who are the warriors that are doing incredible work, including all my friends here, but every day, and we couldn't do this without you. Let me give a shout out to Martha R., who leads our Homeless Services Network, who I work closely with. And from an Advent Health perspective, because I think there's so many people in the business community here. Why is a health system, why have we for decades now been involved in housing policy? Well, housing is healthcare, right? We ask a question to anybody who's admitted to our hospital. We ask a series of questions. And one of them is, do you have a home? Do you have a safe, secure place to sleep at night? And in the last half of 2025, 3,000 of our patients said no. So it is something we deal with every day, And we, as a faith-based nonprofit, our mission is to extend the healing ministry of Christ. We cannot do it without partnerships. From the policy perspective, there are shifts happening. Guess what? Every time a new administration comes in, many of the things that we were working on tend to be shifted, unwound in some places, and that is a trickle-down effect. Healthcare, government is our biggest client. They pay us the same. Any change in administration generally, just as you might be getting going on something, they kind of change the script. So I'll go into a little bit of it, but I think it's a highlight in terms of always remember, too, all politics and all policy is local. You can impact change, which is so great to see. What Habitat's doing is, yes, there are rules of the road, and there are regulatory frameworks and things that we have to deal with, but there's also space for creativity and innovation and partnerships. So I would say from a federal space, what we're seeing that could be very impactful, it will be impactful to our community, is the shift away from permanent supportive housing. We built, Shelley knows this, I mean, the whole impetus for all the incredible work that the Central Florida region has done, and really across the country, was because there was just a fundamental belief that if you have a permanent place to live, you are going to be more successful in life. And the federal government is changing that dynamic and saying, actually, we're going to put funding in other buckets because we believe that's not the answer. That could mean, here in Central Florida, I actually just got my numbers from Martha, we could have 500, 600 people that have been beneficiaries of that program gone. So that is a major
So when you
shift.
say gone, you mean wash out of housing?
They will no longer be eligible, exactly, because those programs are going away. They're changing that. They're also looking at difference with community block grants. Again, remember that trickle down. The orange counties of the world have to make sure they are qualifying for these federal dollars. If their programs don't meet those regulations, they will no longer be eligible. So that would probably be, and this is, again, I give so much credit to the organizations that are trying to navigate through this ever-changing regulatory framework, but we could be facing a pretty significant shift. And remember, so much part of it is, it's not just folks who are potentially homeless, people who have conditions that require them to have it. It's people on the brink of homelessness. The point in time count this year, a quarter of the recipients, I mean of the folks that we surveyed, they were seniors, over 55. So the changing face of that, important, as we know, we have our affordable housing issue, but also those that may be at the risk of being homeless. Let's shift to the state, only because I do believe we tend to be sometimes in the policy space a bit of a wet blanket. Florida has done some very, very significant investments in affordable housing. Live Local, for all of its ups and downs, largest investment in affordable housing policy and things in the state's history. Now, any housing policy, any federal, any state government is going to have strings. And I think what I heard what Catherine's saying too is programs are going to have hurdles to clear, and there will be audits of those, oversight of that sometimes that makes it so impossible to navigate. Sometimes those dollars become even more challenging. Public camping was another one where we had, again, more of a criminalization of some of those things. However, to be more on the Sadowski funds that for many years were being raided, those critical dollars for the state of Florida. We've gone now 5 years with that not happening. And in the current House and Senate budget, which we don't have a budget yet in Florida, everyone's still waiting, but it looks as if that again we will continue that stability. So we will celebrate the legislature and the administration being understanding that these programs work. And then finally, I'll end with, and maybe we'll get back to that, on the faith question specifically. Last year, Yes in God's Backyard did pass here in the state of Florida. Love that, right? And again, that is incentivizing faith-based organizations who have land. And according to the assessment at the state level, there are 30,000 parcels that could be eligible, that you would be unburdened by some of those regulatory challenges, zoning requirements, and other, expediting processes. So we'll celebrate that there are some hopeful things that specifically are to incentivize those in the faith community to get involved in affordable housing.
Interesting. We may come back to that for a little bit, but let me bounce over to Shelley. And you, as the CEO of the commission, and also with other nonprofits, you've had lots of interactions with the faith community, and I would just love to hear your experience and your candor in where has the faith community been helpful in some instances, and where have you found the faith community challenging to deal with?
Okay, this is a little audience participation here.
Good.
He starts with, how is it working with the faith community? Remembering that my co-chairs at the Commission on Homelessness was Dr. Swanson and Dr. Hunter. So, give me some help here. How do you think I should answer that? It was fabulous.
It was no picnic. It was no picnic at all.
Seriously, I have been around, and my focus, my background, for those of you who don't know me, I can't seem to keep a job. I jump around to a lot of different things because I'm a community builder. That's what I do. It's what I love. And I was fortunate enough, back at the turn of the century, in the year 1999, when Jacob Stewart asked me to come and help him really think about what our community was going to look like in the 21st century, different than it was today. And one of the very first things this man taught me that I will always, always use is every community has a number of sectors. And one of the very most important is the faith community, because they lead conversations every week. And that's an important connection we should always have. So I can remember the very first time I ever met Bishop here was when we were doing a project called How Shall We Grow? And he opened up his church so that we could have connections and conversations with the people of his community to learn how they wanted to grow. Every project I've ever done, I go back to the matrix that Jacob always forced me to put together. Who was involved, what sectors were involved, and are we making sure we're leading with the faith community? Mm-hmm. So that's been my experience, and I do think that we're seeing it again now with an effort some of you may have heard about called the Central Florida Pledge, where the faith community is actually leading on how do we become a more civil society again back here in Central Florida. I think, and Shannon, to go back to something you said, I think this, don't you love, yes, in God's backyard, that's just like, that's got to be on some tagline somewhere, that the faith community has an opportunity to lead again. But I would go back to what Dr. Brill said. We don't have the system in place. Shannon will remember, all of you who were involved in homelessness when I was there, and I was, it's actually started again with Ed Timberlake and Jacob Stewart getting the business community involved. But for the first time, I think we have an opportunity to test that theory of how the faith community can really help us. Because, man, we have experts all over this room of faith leaders who have already tested this concept. So you're going to hear from Bishop Wiggins, Eddie, your business organization, all faith-led, but also others in the room. Eric Gray's organization, Christian Service Center, Reverend Mary Downey, her work with actually taking a hotel and opening up for 66 people just this week. But guess what? It took her 5 years to do it with all the partners around the table. So I think Yes in God's Backyard gives an opportunity if we do put a system around that. And that is, we've got experts in this community who can tell what works, what failed, what has really worked in their very different models. There are 3 different models, and guess what? They are working. So how do we connect the experts with the people who want to become experts with the larger community to really make a difference? And there are steps that we could take, but the number one thing, Catherine, and I think it's you, we need a convener again. A convener that keeps educating all of us on how to support the work of the faith community, the contractors, government, and nonprofits, because that's the team that's got to do this. How do we support them in this community to make sure we have a system in place that doesn't just have people drop by the wayside again and again and again? Because I don't know why any faith community would want to get involved right now. It's too complex. It's too fragmented. It costs so much money, and the risk associated with building is huge. So to those of you who have done it, thank you so very much. But until we get a system in place, it's going to be hard to encourage the faith community to really take an active role.
Well, and to say what I'm sure Shelley wants to say and is definitely not saying, and that is there are times when working with the faith community, as many of you know, is no picnic, because there are a lot of churches that are so focused on what they're trying to do and their own survival that they will go to a nonprofit or Habitat, let's say, and we want to help, but we want to help on our schedule. And we want to help you on Monday, Wednesday, Friday between 4 and 6 because that's when our people are available. And service in the community doesn't work that way. And so we've got to find ways in which the faith community can be galvanized and we can gain access to the places where we can serve, but recognizing it might not always be on our time frame or in the way that we think. So,
David,
yes.
Can I just add, though?
Sure.
I think it's because we need to change the conversation. It's not how the faith community can help the community. It's how the community can help the faith community be successful. And no sector is perfect. I worked with a lot of businesses that weren't a whole lot of fun to work with because it wasn't their thing. So we got to find the people it is their thing and then surround them so that they can be successful.
All right, to Archbishop Wiggins, this very quiet, seemingly mild-mannered, unassuming human is inside that brain is going 100 miles an hour, and he's done incredibly innovative things. But talk about, Archbishop, the real estate in your community, the housing opportunities you created for your people, and what were the keys that you had in succeeding in that way?
Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation, and thank you for putting this together, because it does take conversations. It really makes a difference. When I look at our history, if you will, one of the things that I believe really prompted us to get into this business, if you will, was a conviction. It was us discovering that there was a need in our community that we were not meeting. And listen, I believe I'm a great preacher, but my preaching was not working. I believe Swanson is a great preacher, but sometimes it's questionable if it's really working. And I remember kind of going outside of our church doors after having an incredible service and looking at this dilapidated apartment complex right across the street from our church. And we are great at what we do, with giving people hope and inspiring them, but it just wasn't enough. So we kind of major in preaching, preach word, but we had to shift the mindset to being a practical witness. Preach word, practical witness. Preach word, powerful witness. In that we had to say, what would Jesus do and how would he really respond to the crisis that's right in front of our doors? So it was a conviction that drove us, not money. It was a conviction that drove us even in the face of lack of money. It was a conviction that drove us even when God wasn't in our backyard. And I say that because, yes, this new policy has passed, but even if we're not funded or if we're not given the tools or a pathway to build more, we can't do it just because we don't have the policy, the power, and sometimes not even the money. And so it was a conviction that drove us, and we ended up buying a complex, and thank God we were able to see immediate change in our community. We were immediately blessed by people saying, thank God the church showed up. And we're like, we've been here all the time, but so I had to deal with changing the mindset of the church or the people of faith, saying to them, yes, we give the foreign mission, but we've got some local challenges right in front of us. So we've got to patronize and give to the need that's right in front of our doors. We got to make a difference. We got to start at home. And that was difficult initially, to your point, David, that you think that church folk and faith folk are just good people, and they are generally, as long as you're doing what they want you to do. But when you push against the grain a bit and you say, no, we need to go buy this boarded up house, this dilapidated property, we need to rid this place of these drug dealers and all of that stuff, and you're saying you want us to put our offerings and our mission towards that, then a whole bunch of questions arise. So we ended up going through a shift in mindset of our congregation. And then we were able to get them to patronize the work. But what really happened that I think took us to the next level in terms of transformation is when we came to the understanding that we could not do it by ourselves. We had to learn how to reach across the aisle. We had to learn how to reach down the street. We had to reach to other faith organizations or other organizations and say, how can we come together to make a difference? You know, my dad went home to be with the Lord in 2007. And he used to always tell me these jokes. I got my son here today. He told me, please don't call him out. That's like giving a dad. Please call me out, Dad. But my son Julian's here. But his granddad would oftentimes tell me these stories. And he would say, you know, there was this man who only had 2 teeth. One on the left, one on the right. The teeth got together and started having a conversation. The one on the left looked at the one on the right and said, wow, it's a lot of space between us. And the one on the right said to the one on the left, man, we would sure look much better if we would come together. And as I look out over this place now, you're closing for Sunday.
Got my clothes.
If we could just come together with no hidden agendas, then we can see transformation happen. Because the truth of the matter is sometimes we're not going to check all of the boxes on the application. But in our case, we took on the mindset of building the community from the inside out. We could not wait for the outside community to come in. We had to have the stick-to-itness to say, we're going to do it, even if we've got to do it little by little. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. If we want to create a place, we want to live. And that's where we put our money, that's where we put our time, and that's where we put our faith. And that has made a difference.
All right, will the Habitat crew please hand out the offering plates now? And we're going to pass those to each table. He's good. I told you he's good.
David, I do need to say this before the closer comes. When I say partnerships, I must thank some of you who are in the room. Because where we lacked and we cast vision, some of you came alongside and made a difference. And that's everybody from First Baptist, your wonderful ministry, David, First Presbyterian. But the city of Orlando stepped up several times, and I see several faces in this place. Advent Health. Just to name, and I know I'm going to get myself in trouble. I didn't name everybody. But please, I want to say thank you publicly for believing in us, trusting us, and walking alongside of us. Because oftentimes we say we want to change the community, but the community does not want you to change it for them. They want to be a part of the change. And so thank you so much.
That's the perfect segue to Eddie. Lyft, if you've never gone down there, it's worth your time to go get a tour of the transformation of that neighborhood. But I think one of the most significant things they did that maybe has been different from some other approaches is before they put a shovel in the ground, they actually went and started meeting with people who actually live there and started talking about what they envisioned and what would you all like to see. And they didn't announce what was going to happen. They collaborated, and one of their big collaboration partners was the faith community and the church in that area. So, Eddie, tell us about kind of the role that the faith community played and how that's kind of shaped what you all have done at Lyft. Mr. Central Floridian of the Year.
Thank you, David. Yes. I love you too, man. So great to be with you all. Thank you for putting this panel together. Likewise, these are people I don't get to see enough. And I see Bishop pretty often. We still don't get to hang out enough. Catherine, thank you for your leadership. I'm so grateful to you, to the board. Dale, I appreciate your kind words. I do have to say, as someone who got to witness Shelley in those early days under Jacob's wings, as so many of us were, the only reason I know how to spell building community is because of Jacob Stewart. Really, please give a round of applause to that incredible man.
Well said.
I will say when we started Lyft Orlando, when I think about our journey in the context of the role of the faith community, I always look to Bishop because, we always credit him as a predecessor of this work in town. Nationally, we knew of no mature examples where we looked at the things that worked in transforming communities around the country. There were no local mature examples of that kind of place-based community development. There was planting a flag in a neighborhood, loving the people who lived in that community, and making the significant investment to change systems and transform outcomes like he was doing there. I'd say we're a slightly different flavor. There is a legendary example of the local institutional church leading the charge for community change, where we're more an example of just the people of God wanting to roll up their sleeves. And I think sometimes we think about the faith community and we picture steeples and pastors and churches and folks inside a building. But the metaphor of the people of God being like salt is because they're everywhere. I'm married to a Cuban, and so I joke around, I run into Cubans everywhere. There are not even that many of them, but they seem to be everywhere. And it's like everywhere you go, you run into one. And this idea that there are people of God, of goodwill, motivated by love and compassion, who want to do good in their community everywhere. And if you're looking for that, if you're fishing for it, you'll start to find folks who are willing to go above and beyond, to go outside of their comfort zone, to spend a little bit longer. And there's a reason for that. I think about our earliest conversation when we first met the bishop. It was like in the very early days of the work. So we've been on this ride for about 13 years. I know it was a while ago. But it wasn't just having someone like him on our board as we've had for all these years. It was also Miss Bassa, who was a founding member of the West Lakes Partnership, the resident-led nonprofit that we supported starting in those early days. She was a pastor of a small local church. Every community meeting, she prayed for me. She walked up to encourage me. When I got beat up, she was the first one to tell me to keep at it. She passed away a few years ago, but that kind of presence, that faithful presence at every stage. We have a video that's like kind of holy for us at Lift Orlando every time we play it. The first time we saw the example of this work that inspired us in Atlanta at a place called Drew Charter School in Eastlake, we flew back, and the treasurer on our board is kind of a tech-savvy guy. And so literally we all landed, left to go back to our offices to work, and by the time we got back to our desk, he had driven through the neighborhood with his iPhone up, recorded a video of himself driving down or of Orange Center Boulevard, of those terrible apartments. Once had been a place of great pride in the 60s and 70s. If you lived on Orange Center, you were bragging that you lived on Orange Center, because some of the most illustrious families were starting their journeys there on that strip. But one absentee slumlord after another turns it into a place where nobody should have been living. And he records this video, makes it to John Young, makes the U-turn, comes back, puts it to this wonderful music, how we're going to change the world. And we were all like so inspired by this little like 3-minute thing. Years go by, and I don't know why I thought about the video, and I pulled it up, and I'm watching as he's coming down Gore, and you pass by the Jones High School Sports Complex, and the road sort of turns a little bit, and there's a tree there right by the gas station, and on the tree, there's a little maybe like 12-inch long sign with a red border on it, white background, just one word in the middle, Jesus. And then when he drives to John Young and he makes the U-turn, turns out there's another tree there. And there's another little sign with a little red border, with a white background, and just one word, Jesus. And I remember watching that and pausing the video and freezing and just realizing, some of us get to take the photo ops now and get awards. But really, the real work had been done for years by people who all they had was faith and prayers, to believe that something better would happen in their communities. And the rest of us are just standing on their shoulders. And what's funny is, fast forward a couple years, part of this work requires trying to solve things people tell you can't be solved, and being naive or silly enough to take on problems that others tell you probably shouldn't take. There's probably easier things you can go figure out. I had a board full of real estate people, and none of us had ever heard of new market tax credits. Didn't know what the heck that was. It's the only thing I've ever been involved with that no matter who I talk to around the country, it's universally described as brain damage. That's how much fun it is to do. And as we did our first deals in that, we also set up an impact investment fund to try to help us move quicker on land than philanthropy would allow us to do. And one of our first sites was it was just kind of like these 2 lots full of garbage. We found a car, we found drug paraphernalia, all kinds of stuff on it. And we finally were able to acquire it, and it's today the site of our Advent Health West Lakes Early Learning Center. It is this gorgeous oasis for our children there. But when we were just getting the site ready and we're tearing down some trees and other things there and hauling stuff out, I decided to just go drive by and see how the work was going. And there was this one tree on the corner that they were just getting ready to tear down. They chopped down all the limbs, and there was this one, just notice on the tree, there's a little sign with a red border and a white background and just one word, Jesus. And I think what I'd like to encourage us to think about is just like, oh gosh, I love that quote from the astronaut. Like when he said that, which he opened up by saying, I didn't prepare anything, and then said those incredible words. Yeah, we're so lucky to live on this planet. It's kind of insane. I've heard that it kind of does something to astronauts when they look back down and see us all on this precious little globe. And when we start to realize just how precious the privilege of creating opportunity, not just for shelter. I mean, Lift Orlando, in many ways, the design of what we do was born out of just being hungry for root causes and not wanting to be busy on symptoms. And so education was our concern. It was kids in the neighborhood. But the first time we tour the school, we find out there's 100% turnover in third grade because of the apartments and the instability there. And so we find ourselves in the housing space because we want to lay a cornerstone for our kids. And I'll just close with this example. I really believe that when we think, whether it's from a policy or community perspective, we need to encourage people willing to do redemptive work. And redemptive work is work that you do not have to do, but you choose to do. Maybe even pay a sacrificial price to do it, because it's the only way things are going to be made right. Because the folks who benefit from things being broken are not going to pay the price, and the people who need things to be repaired cannot afford to pay the price. But if you want to see change, you're going to have to pay the price. And that's the call of the people of God, wherever they are, whatever their role is, whether they're clergy or not.
That'll preach too. So, yeah, it's kind of funny. The Habitat staff, very wonderful staff, they told me ahead of time they were going to hold up these cards that would tell me how much time I have. And I wanted to say, do you know what it means when you hold up a card to a preacher? And
we've got plenty of them up here.
And the answer is absolutely nothing. So, but I will try to behave myself. So I think the card, and the other thing is I can't see, so I don't know what the card said. So am I Q&A now? I think that's Q&A. Good. So questions that you all might have for our august panel. Yes, ma'am.
First and foremost, thank you all for the amazing work that you continue to do in Orlando in all of your sectors and spaces. I want to go back to something that you brought up at the beginning of the presentation, and that was interventionism as well as the senior citizen crisis specifically. I used to represent homeowner associations and condo associations, and over the past 5 years specifically, the condo units that used to be affordable for seniors and first-time home buyers have now become prohibitively expensive because of assessments. Other thing that you also hear about is tax deed foreclosures along the line with assessment foreclosure sales. A lot of times it may be $3,000-$5,000 that will keep someone from losing the home, as opposed to it being purchased and then trying to scramble and get that asset back. Wondering what efforts, if any at all, have been designed, short of both at the government level, but in between at the churches. How do we help save homes from being foreclosed on? How do we help seniors prepare estate planning? How do we help heirs clear up heirs' property? These are some of the things that prevent homelessness in the first place, and just wanting to hear more about the interventionist measures there.
I mean, that's so critically important, and I think that's why I wanted to touch on it. There are multiple faces of homelessness, and yet so many vulnerable folks are one unfortunate event, one lost paycheck, whatever, from that. And that's where most of the work is. There are programs that we're all a part of that are for the chronically homeless and the service, and that's going to continue, but we have to focus those efforts there. A lot of those do exist, mostly at the county level. Like I said, we've got experts in the room with Martha and others. There are roles that the public sector can play, and I want to applaud. Many of them are doing those. There's housing assistance programs. There's that financial planning, the navigation. A lot of it really cropped up, frankly, during COVID, because there were so many people at risk of losing their home. So part of it is education. know what existing resources there are, and then the other part of it, which is what you're tapping into, is what are we all doing? So I mentioned our screening questionnaires. We have a responsibility. We are not going to treat you and then understand this information and say good luck to you. And that's where we many of them are right here. That's where we partner with organizations that we know can close that loop, that we know, and if they don't have the resources, how can we partner with them to get them? And many of them have been, frankly, accountability on all of us, not just for outputs. Here's how many people we screened and here's how many, but what are the outcomes? How are we working together to bend that curve? And a lot of it is in those very unique things that you mentioned, and making sure that those folks that hold the keys to somebody's future, literally, they're working with us, not against us. Anything you guys would add to that?
Well, it goes back, Shannon, to I think the pilot that your organization helped us do very early on in homelessness. And I think that is a model that could really help Dale get to where Dale wants to get to, is take it down to one level, which is you have to, if you've got to develop, if you're a faith leader and a developer and a nonprofit and the government, you have to do a test. You have to do a pilot to see if you have a shared vision, if you have shared outcomes, and that's what Advent Health stepped up and helped us do with thinking about the chronically homeless. What really was going to work? And they invested in that. And that's all. In our community, we don't invest enough in the pilot, in the model, to test and adjust so that we can build a system. We go from one-offs to system and nothing in between. And I think there's lots of models here for senior citizens that are working. There's lots of models for total communities, but we haven't woven them together to really build a stronger Central Florida.
Well, and I think part of it is also on the data is the cost, because you make the case. Look, spend money on these programs, you're going to save money on the other end. That was that recurring emergency room visit and what that was costing versus getting someone into a permanent home.
I will say, and I know our time is drawing near, for our church congregation, because people want to feel and be invested in the need. And one of the things that we developed is a microcosm called Hope Cares. And Hope Cares is that ministry that fills the gap for those people who needing rental assistance, those people who needing clothes, those people needing food. We partner with Christian Service Center all the time. And so we don't have an abundance, but such as we have, we use to give back.
One more question. Yes, ma'am. Yep.
One of the roles that I think, and you all, first of all, amazing conversation and wonderful witnesses. But one of the roles that I think the faith institutions play in communities is they're trust brokers. And so I was listening to your comment on the outputs. I don't know that organizations have effectively figured out how to measure trust, because it's a very qualitative, it's very costly, and it's also very much of it is a revenue generator ultimately at the end. So, but how do we begin to measure that and quantify it so that those who only think in quantitative numbers value that role? Because I think it's undervalued because we don't know how to capture it. And my last part is because it is what is essential to take us from pilot to system and into a prophetic reality. So I'm curious to hear you all talk about that.
Eddie will
That's a great
finish
one for you,
this,
Eddie.
but let me also say that there's a counter to trust. Our community is driven by transactions. So you have the tension between transactions and trust. And so that's where we find ourselves as a faith leader being able to broker trust in the community so that the proper transaction can be made. And trust takes time.
Yeah, that's what was going to be my comment. Was I think what you see here is these are people who have all been in the community for many, many years, and over that time have built trust. So when they go forward with ideas and creativity and invitation to, as we've done today, we invited all of you here to have a conversation. We hope it's the first of many in this area because you've been here a while and people know you and trust you. You've got relational credibility. Then people are going to participate. And I think that is that's a testament to a long obedience in the same direction.
I think for us, that's been such a major factor. We've been working very hard in recent years to try to create the pathways for others to replicate our work and hopefully exceed our work. If we can get other communities to do in half the time what we've seen, that's real success for us. But as I've described some of those tools and roadmaps that we're putting together, I have been asked when people have heard some of the horror stories of how hard it can be to build trust and earn it and maintain it over time is, well, what's the shortcut for that? It's like, oh no, there's no shortcut for that. That takes the time it takes. Because relationships are like that. They require commitment, but once you gain it, and once you prove it over time, we've recently had some major wins in the community where I didn't have to open my mouth, where someone else spoke of our reputation, not of our promises, in order to win the argument. But to that end, I'll say just as a final point, there's one thing I'd love to insert into this conversation. As we as a community think about this, I think as Dale and Catherine spoke of, we can figure this out. I mean, I know it's a problem everybody's talking about. It seems like one of those things that's never going to go away. We've been talking about it forever. We'll probably be talking about it for another 100 years, but that's what people said about the neighborhood we've been working in the last 10. And it's going to be even better in the years to come. We can figure this out. I do think one idea that I just don't hear enough about is that we have evolved a system that both treats housing as a private sector market for those who have the money to afford it, while also trying to drive the execution of it through local government regulation. We've got to find a way for government, now knowing that these are mature sectors, that builders have standards and real liabilities if they don't comply with safety and other measures. What are the bare minimum essentials, especially in the places where it's hard to build, where it's more difficult to get a project done? How do we incentivize those projects by reducing the red tape, cutting down the cost? In multifamily, that can be 40% of a project. 40%! If we can rethink the way that we make housing feel fueled and enabled by local leadership and allow for more private sector individuals, churches, business leaders who want to do this because it's the right thing to do. One of my inspirations, I moved into 32805 with my family early on. I remember around the same time hearing the story of Cecil Guinness. Cecil was the great-grandson of the founder of Guinness Beer, and different from the Netflix series, not that I've seen it, but I've heard plenty about it, is the original Guinness family had 3 lines. It was the brewery, the missionaries, and the bankers. And I know a few people in the missionary side of that family. But that legacy that reached Edward Cecil Guinness led to the fact that on his wedding day, he was given 5 million sterling pounds as a gift. And instead of spending it, he and his wife gave it to charity and then moved for the first year of their marriage into public tenement housing. In the years that followed, the company learned the poor conditions that their employees were living in and decided to build new housing for their employees. They eventually built parks and hospitals and clinics and schools. Till this day, you go to Dublin and London, you can find Guinness housing still standing. Because they did something that was different than whatever. Most cities were slum at that time. If our local leadership, if this conversation, the people in this room, can find ways to unleash more people of God willing to do the very difficult, challenging work of not providing typical affordable housing, but high quality, award-winning, mixed income, beautiful housing any of us would be proud to live in, and make sure it's still affordable for families to stay there, we can absolutely not only solve this, but hit the ball out of the park.
Would you thank our panel? And now I would like to invite Robert Stewart, our Habitat Orange Osceola Board Chair, to return for our next portion of the program.
I'm gonna show my Baptist roots here, but and all God's people said that was remarkable, absolutely incredible. Dr. Swanson, thank you for leading that, and you nailed everything. The one correction I will make is that I heard about your tie bet, and I deliberately didn't wear one, but Jacob Jr. is wearing one, and that highlights an important point. There are 4 stewards in the room, and there's an old adage, if there's too many of us in one place, you should probably run. But we love this community, and we're not going anywhere. So, but Dr. Swanson, panel, that was phenomenal. Friends, we have remarkable leaders in this community. And today, we're going to honor, and you're going to be here for recognizing one that's on our Mount Rushmore. Senator Martinez, along with his wife Kitty and their family, have made remarkable contributions to our community, particularly in the realm of public service, leadership, innovating housing policy. Senator Martinez's unwavering commitment to improving lives and fostering opportunities for all is a testament to his character and to his dedication to this community. Senator, I'm going to unburden myself of something I've carried for 20 years. You don't know this. But in 2005, as a brand new, wet behind the ears graduate of the University of Florida, go Gators, despite that, you were piecing together your staff, and your state director had I don't know where he saw it, but had something that he saw in me and offered me a position on your staff as an assistant to the state director. I turned the job down, Senator. A decision that I think did 2 things. One, it made your staff better, that I wasn't on it. And I think my friends at Gray Robinson have probably regretted that decision for the last 20 years, even more than I did. But Senator, for me, it highlights just how much you've meant to me personally and professionally, how much your family means to me and to the Stewarts as a whole. I'm so proud to know you and to call you friend. And so before we get to the main event, we're gonna watch a video that's gonna highlight just a little bit of your incredible journey in public service. So let's take a moment together, turn your attention to the televisions, and we're gonna reflect on the legacy that you've built and the lives that you continue to touch.
Before the accolades, before the history-making titles, there was a young man on a profound journey, a journey that began with loss and hope. Mel Martinez was born in Sagua La Grande, Cuba, and in 1962, he arrived in the United States through Operation Pedro Pan. For countless Cuban families, this was a moment fraught with fear and uncertainty, a heart-wrenching choice to send their children to safety. For years, Mel lived a child navigating a new world, supported by an adopted family. But in 1966, destiny brought them back together in Orlando, a city that not only welcomed him, but became the very soil where his dreams would take root and flourish. He pursued his education locally before moving on to Florida State University, where he earned both his bachelor's and law degrees by 1973. It was here that he met Kitty, his partner in life, starting a journey of love and shared purpose that would anchor their family.
To me, home was defined by leaving my home at an early age, never to return. And then it was redefined again when I went with my dad to secure a mortgage to buy the first home in America for our family. How my dad and my mom felt, and we really are in America now. This is our home. And it was because of the building we were now in that was owned by us. And that just made all the difference.
As a young attorney, Mel carved out a respected legal career, but his vision extended far beyond personal achievement. That calling found early expression in housing. Appointed by Orlando Mayor Bill Frederick to the Orlando Housing Authority, where Mel led initiatives grounded in compassion and practicality.
I understood early on that the only way for things to really get accomplished is in partnership. A partnership between government, the private sector, and the not-for-profit sector. The intersection of all of those coming together is really what moves communities in the right direction. It's really what makes a difference.
In his role as Orange County Mayor, Mel championed policies that strengthened neighborhoods, improved lives, and united communities, always with a focus on the people behind the policies. Long before his ascent to national leadership, Mel earned a reputation as a thoughtful problem solver, someone who grasped that housing, community support, and economic opportunity are inextricably linked.
The need for housing as a component of a community is overwhelming because it impacts every other facet of a person's life. Health improves. The educational outcomes improve. It's the cornerstone of what makes a community healthy, and then everything else falls into place.
In 2001, that commitment propelled him to the national stage as Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. This historic appointment was more than just a title. It was a chance to infuse lived experience and local wisdom into one of the nation's most critical responsibilities. At HUD, Mel championed homeownership, revitalized affordable housing initiatives, and forged powerful partnerships among government, business, faith communities, and grassroots organizations. Together with Kitty, their private convictions became a public display of commitment to each other and an understanding of the benefit of joining the practical work of home building with the power of public policy.
Well, you certainly have to do both. The end result of putting up the bricks and putting up the sticks is important, but there's a lot more that has to happen before that happens, concurrent and before and after. So, no, policy has to be a part of it.
Well, I think what moves people to be a part of Habitat is that they have a good heart and they know that people are hurting because they don't have adequate housing. And so one solution is to build a house. And obviously that's what Habitat has done, what Kitty and I have done as we've gone on builds, over the years, starting with our local church and then later in Washington. But if you don't have the advocacy about policy on housing, you really are not impacting housing at a greater level. You can help one family, and that's great. And to that family, that's everything. But when you can help 100 families or 1,000 families or 10,000 families, when you alter policy in a beneficial way to make housing more affordable, you're really solving a lot of societal problems today. Look, you have to understand that things have to evolve as the demands of time demanded. And today, the greatest crisis our country has is the lack of affordability of housing.
Mel Martinez would become the first Cuban American in a presidential cabinet and the first to serve in the United States Senate. These milestones were not just personal triumphs. They opened doors for countless others and stood as a powerful testament to the promise of America. So today, we take great pride in honoring Mel Martinez for more than titles. We honor him for the unwavering service that has defined every chapter of his life, from local leadership to national influence. We celebrate him for never losing sight of the people behind the policies. And we recognize him for keeping his heart rooted in Central Florida, even as his impact resonated across the nation.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to honor today Senator Martinez with our first inaugural Lifetime Service Award. And it's an award that will forever bear his name as we give it out in the years ahead to other leaders deserving of recognition in our community. It will forever have Senator Martinez's name. Join me in welcoming Senator Martinez.
Okay. Whoa. That's kind of tough, to just watch that and then be asked to say a couple of words. First of all, let me say my gratitude is immense. I am so grateful to Habitat, to Robert, to the board, Catherine, all of those of you who've had a hand in honoring me in this way. It means a great deal to me. I've been very blessed to, have opportunities to do a number of things across the country. It's never sweeter than when it happens in your hometown. and with the people you love and the people you always have wanted to do things for, because so much was done for me. I have my family here, so let me, first of all, after thanking all of those of you who had a hand in the award and the video, by the way. Dale, I probably think I heard your voice in that, and so anyway, thank you for that very, very kind way of portraying my life. But my wife, Kitty, is here, who has been my partner and without whom I would not have been able to go in the journey that I've gone on, and that has made it all the more fun because we've been partners in all that I've done. At times saying, I will never give a speech, you can run for whatever you want, but then she actually did give speeches. So, you know, and with that, she was always a partner and a friend, and also my dear and beloved spouse. And our children, two of them are here today. The other one has escaped to Seattle. And when you go to Seattle to do that program, I got 2 volunteers for you. My son and his wife will be at the head of the list, so we need to change. Pardon me? Exactly. Yes. They don't know it yet, but they're going to be. Anyway, Lauren is here, who is our first child, and she came to our lives through adoption, which was a community thing. And here's something kind of cool. Catholic Charities took care of me when I came to Florida. I went to Bishop Moore. They found me a foster home, 2 of them, in fact. And Catholic Charities placed her in our home. So anyway, that was another treat and another part of the faith community touching lives. Our son John, who is someone we also see in many things in the community, and very proud that he's following in the footsteps of community service. Our son Andrew is not here. As I said, he lives in Seattle, but he's a future Habitat volunteer. And someone else super important in this whole journey is someone who for 27 years has put up with me, has sent me to the right place, has made sure that I didn't forget an appointment, has always faithfully told me when I was about to say something stupid in one of my speeches. My dear friend and assistant, Terry Couch, who began with me at the county when I was mayor, took the journey to Washington and back and everything in between. And in the meantime, she also helped raise our children, especially when they were in college and out of money. So, Catherine, we're going to do a little dialogue, but and let me say, by the way, before we do that, because I can say it as part of that too, but when I went to HUD and I went to do my job there, one of the first things that President Bush wanted to do was something he called the faith-based initiatives. And someone mentioned in the course of the panel that one administration comes and something comes in and then something goes out, and for whatever reason, that kind of got lost. But you know, Department of HUD, under my leadership, I'm proud to say, was the first department to embrace that faith-based initiatives and to promote it and to go all over the country trying to build partnerships with the faith institutions. And that was my passion because I had been a mayor right here in Orange County, right here in River City, and I had seen the power of the partnerships of the faith community working with government, working with the not-for-profit. Thank you, Shannon, for all Advent does and all the other community organizations that pitch in and put their shoulder to the wheel. And so that panel on the faith component of it, Pastor Swanson, you did once again a great job. I hope I may come listen to your sermon Sunday. It's going to be a doozy. You've got it all put together. But anyway, it's so important. You know, you just can't do it without that component. You know, here's a perfect example of what doesn't work. Government had an apartment building over there in the Lift neighborhood, what is today Lift, and it was a Section 8 apartment. And you know, as time goes, it just doesn't work that well. And as much as HUD tries to do, and as much as, you know, I mean, they're 40-year-old units, and they've had renters, and people come and people go. It's not going to be eternal, but it continues to be, and it becomes a blight. And when that happens, everything else fails. And so the example of Lift Orlando is not only part of the failure of government when it tries to do it all alone and dictating from Washington what the average rental ought to be for a community that God knows what it is locally, but it also is
the beauty of LIFT in that partnership, Eddie, Man of the Year, has created with the faith community, with the governmental sector, everybody coming together, financial institutions, all of it. And that's what really is the failure and the success. One alone can't do it. If we pull it together, boy, a lot of good things can happen. So anyway, again, I'm hugely honored, and I really thank you from the depth of my heart. I have great love for Habitat and all that you do, so we'll talk more about that. Thank you.
Senator, on behalf of all of us, again, thank you. Thank you for everything. We're grateful. I've had the honor, being a lifetime Central Floridian, of seeing you progress as you lead our county, as you lead federally. What was the biggest thing that you learned that you think we can keep doing, should be doing, or never did, but we need to bring it back?
Well, first of all, you're doing a lot of things right. I mean, what we heard here in this panel, right? It's phenomenal. It's really important. It's really good. I know of Shelley's work. My daughter-in-law worked with her for a while. And the dynamic things that they were trying to do at that level with the homeless situation, which, you know, I worked on that at HUD as well. It was so important to try to get that going in a better way. So to me, it's about partnerships. It's about not going it alone, but bringing everything together. And then the second thing is that you've got to impact governmental policy. I mean, you really do. You've got to be the squeaky wheel. You've got to be the pain in the backside of government. And I'm sorry, Byron, I'm going to cause trouble for you. Mitch Glasser, you're probably still here, I hope. No, but you know, government can't do it alone. And so if we all pull together, and if we all become advocates for those who cannot have a voice themselves, then you begin to really move the ball forward. You're doing a lot of it. I mean, but we just got to do more of it. And to me, the frustrating part is last night I was at a function and saw someone who told me that he was a builder in low-income housing tax credit. And I just got a new unit. It's taken me 7 years, but we're there. Why is it going to take 7 years? You know, the credits are there. The property is there. You've got it all going. But when you take 7 years to do that, that is imposing a huge tax on the cost of building houses. And instead of putting low-income housing, instead of doing 150 units, you might have been able to do 300, you know, if it had taken 6 months. Why should it take that long? We've got to change that dynamic. We just cannot accept that as being what it should be. You know, my frustration sometimes is I didn't stay in the county long enough to really kick some butt, you know, to really get some people irritated at me more than I already did. Byron, you testimony to that, right? I mean, I was an irritant. Terry was there too. And I mean, it wasn't always making people happy. It was putting pressure on them to get things done differently, better. I don't think it was 7 years back then. Maybe it is now. But it doesn't have to be, and it shouldn't be.
Kick some butt, that's what we just heard from
You know, I mean, seriously, yeah. Mine got kicked a few times by the media.
That's definitely the case, right? Any of us who are trying to do hard work, we're going to have bumps and bruises,
Sure.
and you did as well. One of the things we talked about a few weeks ago was the future generation in housing, how our children, our grandchildren are really struggling to think that they will ever be a homeowner. How do you, one, you have a personal relationship in this position, but how should we encourage that next generation, that it's going to be okay, that American dream is still attainable for them?
You know, a lot of times people say that my life has been living the American dream, and I acknowledge that. I think that it has been the living of the American dream in so many ways, and it makes me so sad when I hear young people say, the American dream is not alive for me, and I'm not going to be able to be, you know, to live that American dream. Or when I hear that the cost of someone having safe housing is unaffordable. And Dale is doing a brilliant job in bringing a focus into all the component parts that makes the cost burden issue be better understood. but it's also, at the end of the day, how can we make home ownership and just a safe place to live more attainable to more families. I'm a real big believer that we not only have to work in terms of a roof, but we also have to work in terms of transportation and the difficulty in transportation cost. You know, we live in a community with, and no fault of Jacob, who maybe has made a lifetime out of getting us more public transit here, you know. I used to always put whatever, I don't know if they called them earmarks anymore or not, but whatever I could bring a little money home, it was always for Lyft. I did a few other things, but, you know, trying to get more money for Lyft. I don't mean Lyft, I'm sorry, Links. My links and my lifts mixed up here. But, you know, for public transport, transit. And you know, John Micah did such a good job with that. He was great. We have Sunrail because of John. And so many of those things are just not here, and they're not available. And the biggest employer in our community is 18 miles that way. And thank goodness for that, by the way, right? I mean, we don't want all those tourists riding here with us. But the problem is that the people who have to work there have a long way to go. And the price of gas today is $5 a gallon, and probably going to be higher. Now, so if you were trying to make ends meet and meet your rent payment, your project just went out the door when the price of gas went up by $1. You know, because you got to drive 18 miles, 36 a day, to go back and forth to go work at the largest employment center that we have. So I don't even know if I'm answering your question, but I'm just going off here.
No, it's good.
Okay,
it's
sorry.
Good. So we want to, the senator was kind enough to say he would take questions from our guests today.
Yeah,
before I do that, though, I want to ask a question that I ask so many people because I think it is a window into your heart. What does home mean to you?
Wow, it means everything, you know. It means everything. I mean, I lost a home. I had to leave it, abandon it. You know, then I was on a Greyhound bus leaving a camp where there were a bunch of us Cuban children, and a Greyhound bus brought me to the Greyhound bus station. It used to be on Amelia for those old Orlando people. Jacob, you remember. There was a family there waiting to pick me up and take me to their home, and that became my home. So when you see that opportunity come, and the fact that I had no place to be, but yet I was given a home. And then, as I mentioned in the video, when my parents then later finally were able to come, and we were renting a house, and it was great, and we were happy, and the people of Orlando just poured their hearts out to us. You know, one day someone drove up with a washer, the next day someone drove up with dishes, and that's how my family started in Orlando. And that's what made me so incredibly grateful to this community and so proud to have been as county chairman, mayor. But so ultimately my parents were able to buy a home. And that journey of home meant everything. When Kitty and I got out of law school, I said, I don't want to be in an apartment. I want to buy something. Her grandfather loaned us $3,000 and we bought a home. Now in those days, a used car today would cost more. It was $27,000 for a little house, you know. And it was a great house and we were so proud of it, you know. And that's just what home means. It's just a place to be, a place to bring your first child, your second child, not as pretty. And then, by the way, we had an enormous gap, and then came our third. So anyway, life happens. But yeah, that's what it means. It just means being rooted in a place where you can call it home, where it is your place. It is where you're going to raise your children. It is where you're going to feel safe. It is where you're going to come home from work. It is everything. A home is everything. And I think it's also, it has to be understood that when a family has a home, the educational outcomes are better, the health is better. That's what Lyft is so beautifully doing. You know, it's a holistic approach to all of it. You know, I also want to mention one other anecdote before I take the questions. Homelessness became a big deal to me while I was at HUD. And David, I just give you so much recognition for the mission that you've had in our downtown, consistent throughout your ministry. And that is just a great thing and a beautiful thing. My downtown church, I think, has been in partnership with you from time to time as well. And, you know, I got to Washington, and I am driving to HUD, and we were there in January. I just started my journey at HUD in January 2001. It was cold, really cold. And for a kid from Cuba by way of Florida, I was out of my environment. And, you know, as I'm driving in the black car in the back seat with the driver and the gun and all of that, and I'm driving to work, and as I get into the district and I start driving down the streets of Washington, I see these people on top of a steam grate. Remember, Terry? And they were just there for the night trying to keep warm. And I thought, man, we got to do something about this homelessness thing. I wonder who's in charge of that. And my driver, who I don't know if it was my driver or it was John Judge, the security guy. Yeah, I kind of said, by the way, who's in charge of this problem? He said, well, sir, I think it's you. And that began a journey, you know, Shelley, that, I mean, I became very passionate about, we got to do something about homelessness. We reactivated the Interagency Council on Homelessness that had been dormant for years. It was created, and it was a great thing, and then it was done away with 10 years. Nobody had met. And so I forced my other cabinet brothers and sisters to come together because it was a comprehensive effort to bring HHS, to bring HUD, and to bring the education, everybody together to say, what are we going to do about homelessness? And we began to come up with some solutions and some research. It's still valid today. We've got to address the problem from the homeless to the one that cannot afford it and is struggling to just keep a rental home, to that dream which fulfills the American dream of home ownership. It's a continuum. It is all a continuum. And so now, you know, as I look at the future, and you're talking about the next generation, I'm talking about my grandkids, you know. I want them to be able to taste that pleasure of affording and being able to do home ownership at some point in their lives.
Well, Senator, we are so glad you call Central Florida home, and we are very, very grateful. As I said, he is willing to take some questions for the audience. We've got some Habitat staff members. Yes. Can I have a water, please?
That's trouble.
There you go.
Thank you.
Yes, Eric Gray.
Senator, thank you for being here. Congratulations on your recognition. I don't see your brother here, but if you have a chance, please say hi to Ralph. He used to be on a board that I worked with.
Thank you. I will.
My question is just a little more contemporary. During your administration, when your time in Washington, there were some pretty phenomenal modern developments made to address homelessness, including advances with permanent supportive housing that was addressed a little bit earlier. And right now, the current administration is getting ready to gut that program. And I wonder if you had any thoughts about the importance or lack of importance, whatever your feelings are, about permanent supportive housing.
No problem here. Look, it's inevitable that from time to time, government is going to take a detour down the wrong path. And that could be happening with a number of things that are, you know, in terms of cutting off governmental funding for certain things. CDBG, I mean, that is alarming. CDBG is so important. I mean, communities do so much with it. Mitch is a master at managing CDBG grants. I mean, I remember how we looked to see how much our grant was because we could do so many things that local government doesn't have the money to do, you know? And so that's huge. That started, by the way, by a Republican, Richard Nixon. I believe it was Nixon, right, Mitch? Check me on that. Anyway, he's shaking his head. Okay, so I was right. Anyway, and so, you know, it is hugely important, and it has to be there as a component part for supportive housing. Because the thing I learned in our studies of homelessness is that unless you're providing supportive housing, unless Philip Mangano, a person that has done some work in our community, someone, I don't know who, but suggested you ought to bring that guy in from Boston. Here's some crazy liberal from Boston and came into a Republican administration. Kind of how it used to be how things were done in Washington, by the way. It was more about getting the job done than it was about what was your party affiliation. Nobody cared. But Philip did a great job because he brought analytics like Dale is doing with the current issues here in Central Florida together to give us an insight on how can we get ahead of the problem. And it was necessary that we had to have a back door that was not open. And so while we can do great things feeding a person for a night or taking care of a person that's cold with a cold night program, that's not getting at the root cause of the problem. We've got to do it by continuing to understand the chronic population and the afflictions that they have, which are not usually just about affording a rent. It's about the things that are impacting their lives, mental illness or addiction very often. And then there's the episodic homeless, but those are less frequent and fewer in numbers. We got to tackle that chronic population if you're going to get ahead of the problem.
Thank you. Shannon.
Shannon.
I'm going to ask the question without, hopefully you won't feel like I'm getting you into a political conversation too.
I just dodged that one, so bring it on.
Because I was bringing up policy things, I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the property tax conversation going on here in the state of Florida. There are concerns, and you led the county here, of what the implications of that proposal, whatever ends up coming out, or it does, and what the voters approve, and what that could mean to local governments, and frankly, local governments in housing assistance programs and other kind of basic needs and other things that they rely upon. Can you speak to that a little bit about the policy?
I mean, I can give you a thoughtful answer, but the short answer is it's crazy talk, you know, because, I mean, what, you know, if you take away the property tax base for a county or for a city, I mean, you're essentially strangling them, right, Byron? I mean, one thing I've never understood or heard anyone articulate is what is the substitute going to be? Because there has to be a substitute, right? I mean, you can't just possibly think that that can go unfilled, that need can go unfilled. You know, when I was in the county, I know that 11% of the county base on property tax came from our friends with the mouse. I mean, why do we need to give them a tax break? You know, I mean, let's face it, they bring a lot of money into the community, but golly, they also create a lot of traffic. They create a lot of employment that, with all due respect to folks at Walt Disney World, and they do a lot of nice things for the community, but a lot of their employment is at not a wage that makes it, all the numbers come together just right. And I'm not attuned to day to day or what they're paying or what, you know, all of that, so I want to tread carefully. But it is important that we recognize that the major employers that pay a lot of the property tax don't need a break. And secondly, that without the property tax base, municipal governments are emasculated from being able to do the things that they must do to provide the services they must provide. And I'm talking now about public safety. I'm not even talking about esoteric things. I'm talking about the sheriff's budget. I'm talking about police budget. I'm talking about first responders, fire and rescue. Those budgets are, how much, Byron? 60% of the county budget? Exactly. That's 60% of the county budget. We're not talking about frills. We're not talking about cute stuff. We're talking about bread and butter county services, public safety. I remember when I was running for mayor, I used to say, the most fundamental duty of government at the local level is to provide for the public safety of his people. And you can't do it if you don't have the money to fund your police or fund your fire. I mean, it just starts with that. Yeah.
Shannon, good answer. Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Senator, as past president of the Florida Home Builders Association, every time we visited Washington, you were very supportive of all our programs. The last 9 years, I've been able to serve on the board for Florida Housing Finance Corporation, distributing tax credits and a lot of other programs. Last year alone, we did $1.7 billion worth of projects, which is, you know, thanks to the Save Local program, we've been able to do that. Unfortunately, every year we get an analysis from the Schimberg Center, and we aren't even touching the problem. It doesn't seem to be getting any better, even with all that funding. So, you know, basically, we have to just keep going, and every year I'm down in Tallahassee, fighting to keep our money.
Yeah.
Anybody that could be helpful, we sure need it, because they keep trying to take it from us.
Right. No, I mean, it's vital. It's so important. And, I also have to say that I'm very proud of the legislature and the governor for not continuing to raid the Sadowski Fund, I remember being in Tallahassee as HUD secretary and going off on that one and saying, what are you people doing? There's a crisis on affordability, and you're taking the Sadowski Fund and just putting it back into the general budget. And it got quoted in the paper, and the next day, Jeb Bush called me and said, you got to stick to federal budgeting and leave the state budgeting alone. Well, Jeb was right about a lot of things, but he wasn't right on that one. Anyway, I feel for you, but you got to keep fighting. You got to keep the fight alive, and hopefully, because it does make a heck of a difference. Those tax credits. That's what in my estimation, the most successful federal program to provide affordable housing is LIHTC. And you're a big part of making that happen, and I think is just super important to providing affordability.
Thank you. Great question. We have time for one more. Yes,
we got
Chev.
two. I'll take two.
Oh, we'll take two.
Usually the
yes,
last
sir.
one is mine.
All right, we'll do Chev and then, yes, sir. So Chev.
Sure. Hello. My name is Chevalier Lovett. I actually serve on the board for Habitat, and I grew up in a Habitat home, so it's really full circle for me. I would like to know the same kind of question I asked Dr. Brill. What makes you hopeful about the changes in housing, and how can we get to better?
By the way, I'm delighted to know you grew up in a Habitat house. We did some Habitat bills. Kitty and I worked together. It was always so much fun. I can never forget and get out of my mind, and I wish we'd had that picture, but remember handing the keys to a Habitat home. We call it the house that the secretary built, and it was a mom with a disabled daughter, and giving that key to them was just about as fun as anything I did while I was in the cabinet. What makes me hopeful is this panel I heard, the commitment of the faith community in this community to make a difference. It makes me hopeful to hear Dale Brill thinking outside the box about how to analyze this, and it's super hopeful to know what this Habitat is doing under the leadership, because it is so important that we not only build a home for someone like you at the time that you needed it, or for me at the time that I needed a house, but it is so important that we think about how to impact policy. Let me touch on something else, and again, I'll dwell on something that probably should have, it's something that's always been within me, that has been an irritant to me. The tourist development tax that this community collects in the millions of dollars has a very narrow usage for it. And in my opinion, and it was my opinion when I was mayor, and it's even stronger today, the tourist development tax ought to not be limited to the very narrow uses that it has had. And to me, in a state that is as house burdened as this state is, the millions and millions of dollars that tax collects, a diversion of just a tiny little bit would be so valuable to accomplish all that this room would love to see happen. That tourist development tax, by the way, compared to other communities, is low. If it was another penny, think of what another penny dedicated to homelessness and affordability of housing, what it could do throughout the state of Florida. That's just a simple thing. And if you're telling me that tourists are not going to come to Orlando because that tax that they didn't even know they had, and they don't even look at until they pay the hotel bill, I got to tell you what, it is a huge one in Washington, okay? And we got a lot more attractions than Washington does, even though that's a pretty good circus, I just, anyway, I get in trouble sometimes when I get off. But I love that idea that we could somehow alter that usage of that money. What a difference it could make. Somebody had to do the math on that. Dale, where are you, man? Let's cut it loose. Let's figure out what one penny additional the tourist development tax would do, how much it would generate. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Byron. 65 million. All right. Dr. Swanson, can you handle 65? Okay.
Well, sir, there's going to be a job available in Tallahassee come January, so maybe.
Oh my God.
Kitty, would you? No. Okay.
Oh,
I
Kitty.
can't do a Mel for
Pull the hook.
governor. Huh?
Well, I'll tell you what, I won't take the job, but I'll sure go up there with you and kick the tires. Yeah.
Thank you.
Stir the pot.
We've got one last question.
I'm
Yes,
sorry.
sir. If you want to stand and let us know who you are and your question, please.
Yes, how you doing? So I'm Terrell DeJournette with Self Help Credit Union. So we're a local and national CDFI in the area. How do you propose that the community gets more involved? And first, thank you, Roxanne Young, for inviting us, Shannon and I. More involved in the community, and how do you feel about CDFIs in the local community and what their knowledge about CDFIs are and how we can impact the community together?
Great question. I happen to have had a second life in the private sector after lawyering and then public life. I had an opportunity to work with J.P. Morgan Chase, and I first of all knew CDFIs from my time in government and all that they do in communities. But through J.P. Morgan, we enter into very strong partnerships, particularly in Detroit, as we tried to sort of change the dynamics of that community and try to make a difference there. But CDFIs play an incredibly important role building a community because, you know, one of the things we've been focused to here today is housing. But if you have housing but you don't have a job, or if you don't have a business in the community where you're building the housing, it's never going to succeed. So you've got to have not only opportunities for people to live safely, but also to be employed and to make a buck and to be able to continue that legacy of building a business, which is so ingrained in my own culture and I believe in yours as well. And so CDFIs are the engine that can, with the help of a financial institution like a J.P. Morgan or others that I know partner with CDFIs, it can make such a difference because it can be in a community providing the financing to people, for people to achieve the dreams that they otherwise would not be able to achieve because the traditional banking system is not available to them. So kudos to you. They're super important. We don't have enough of you, and those of you that are out there really ought to be supported, particularly from the private sector. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Senator, thank you, sir. We are so very grateful, and we appreciate you very much.
Thank you again.
Wow. Did you accomplish what you had wanted to accomplish when you came here today? Good. So it's our goal at Habitat Orlando and Osceola to really help convene the community, understanding we're not going to do it alone. It's going to take all of us in this room, all of us within the community. And so please know that we will be in touch, not to ask you for money, but to ask you for your time, to ask you for your input, your guidance, your wisdom, your connections. Because if we talk about housing as a community, we will make change. And we have no choice but to make change. So I'm very grateful on behalf of our board of directors, our board chair, and Kitty and Lauren and John, thank you so much for sharing the senator with us for so many years. It's just truly an honor. You're very impressive, and it comes from the heart, and that is just so nice for all of us in the room who are doing the work to really see that this is a truly, genuinely important conversation for you. So thank you. We will be hosting a reception concluding after this, and I promise I'm going to finish up in just a minute. Again, thank you so much to Habitat for Humanity International, Natasha, Tim, Lauren, and team. We're so grateful to have been chosen as one of 5 affiliates across the United States to have and be part of Home is the Key. So thank you again for all you're doing, not just here in the United States, but globally. We are grateful. Thank you all, and remember, home is the key. Housing is the cornerstone. Thank you again for your time today. I look forward to seeing you at the reception.